Welcome to this hour of the absolute truth. We are awaiting President Trump and his cabinet meeting at the White House. And as soon as that goes live, we will dip in to listen to the president's comments, as there is so much news I suspect he will comment on. In the meantime, there's a new rumor that Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. will soon remove the COVID vaccines from the marketplace entirely. That news came after a recent Maha Action Network meeting where an RFK advisor named Dr. Mahatra apparently told a group of Maha activists that the COVID vaccines would be pulled from the U.S. market in the next few months. Dr. Mahatra reportedly also told the Maha Network that an ongoing review of vaccine injuries was being conducted by a government advisory group right now, too. Yesterday, the news also broke that another vaccine skeptic had been added to a key advisory panel. Recep Levy was named as the head of the COVID immunization work group, according to an HHS spokesman. Now, that news was greeted with howls by various big pharma and big media outlets like Reuters, which is a good sign for Levy's credentials. We also have good news from the state of Idaho, where a ban on all vaccine mandates in schools and workplaces and government services has now gone into effect. And starting July 1st in Idaho, you can simply tell your crazy neighbors and nurses and government hacks that your vaccine status is, well, really none of their business. Watch this.
Well, some Idaho lawmakers are now looking into adding criminal charges for anyone who administers an mRNA vaccine like a COVID or flu shot. A bill officially introduced into the Idaho State Legislature would do just that. Tonight at 6, Bronte Suratsky joins us live in studio and explains what mRNA vaccines are and why some lawmakers in Idaho want them gone.
Well, this bill, if passed, would amend Idaho State Code by adding a new section to penalize anyone from administering an mRNA vaccine in the state with a misdemeanor. In Idaho, a misdemeanor offense is punishable by jail time or a fine.
And we are seeing more and more concerns rising because of the mRNA vaccine.
Idaho Senator Tammy Nichols, one of the lawmakers sponsoring this bill, says she's had concerns about the COVID-19 vaccine because it was administered under an emergency use authorization before receiving FDA approval. The bill would essentially make it a misdemeanor for anyone to administer an mRNA vaccine like a COVID shot in the state of Idaho.
And it looks like the states of Kentucky and Montana are following Idaho's lead by introducing legislation that would prevent mRNA vaccines from being administered to anyone as well. The legislation in Idaho arrived too late for the Owen family, whose premature twins were given 5 vaccines at the same time. Both babies had immediate reactions, but were discharged from the hospital anyway with Tylenol, a medication known to be linked to autism in infants as well. 8 days later, both babies died, and yet no official investigation has been launched into their deaths. That story was first reported by a Midwestern doctor on Substack. Finally, we have the story of Sarepta, a pharmaceutical company whose new drug called Elevidys was supposed to be a muscular dystrophy gene therapy. The problem was that the new drug was dangerous to the liver. More than 46% of the children in the test trials of this new drug were harmed with injuries to their livers, and between 5% and 8% of these children were hospitalized with acute liver injuries. Now, what makes the Sarepta drug story so interesting, though, is that the company reportedly has hired a lobbying firm linked to President Trump's campaign advisor, Chris LaCivita. Remember that guy? That firm was hired just before a top FDA official named Dr. Vinay Prasad was fired this summer in a tug-of-war between the Trump White House and Health Secretary Bobby Kennedy. Prasad was basically in charge of approving Sarepta's drug for the marketplace after clinical trials. Will Sarepta's new drug be approved or denied in the end? Will the Trump White House support Kennedy's mission to make America healthy again, or will it sabotage him with favors to Big Pharma? The fate of Sarepta's new drug may provide us with that very answer. And that's the absolute truth. In In the wake of some truly historic moves by Trump administration Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, it is now without a doubt that the Obama regime, along with Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, manipulated the U.S. intelligence community into pursuing Donald Trump by wrongly claiming he was a Russian disinformation agent, one of their favorite monikers. When former Obama Director of National Intelligence James Clapper was conspiring to accuse Donald Trump of being a Russian spy, it was National Security Agency head Admiral Mike Rogers who questioned the desire by key intel leaders in the Obama administration. He insisted that Clapper and the other perpetrators of the Russia collusion delusion create a real intelligence assessment on whether Trump was indeed, Russian agent of influence by following all proper protocols, to which Clapper responded, quote, "We may hate to compromise our normal modalities since we must do this on such a compressed schedule. I cannot stress to you how badly these people in Obama's orbit violated their oaths and likely the law in their, I think most obviously the law, in their quest to get Donald Trump out of office, no matter what. That was their mission. But all of that is changing under Trump today. No longer will accountability in Washington, D.C. be a four-letter word, or so we hope. We're now joined by Doc Pete Chambers to tell us how President Trump is bringing accountability to the swamp and how he hopes to be Texas's next governor. It's good to see you, Doc Chambers. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you, Emerald. I've been dying to meet you.
I know everybody has reached out to me and said, you have to have Doc Chambers on. I agree. So this is such a pleasure. Look, the swamp extends beyond the swamp of DC. And I know you're well versed in the politics of what's going on and the Russiagate hoax that the intelligence community perpetuated during the Trump years. But I think it can be extrapolated to what we see in the States because it literally affects every person. Some people think, oh, this is just nonsense national, scandal, news, tabloid-ish, but it's not because it's had a major effect on our constitutional republic. Doc, tell us what you see happening now under the Trump administration, how you think that's going to affect, say, the people in Texas, if there's accountability in D.C.
Right, and it really has. And the best part about it for us, and I was a guy that came from the border. I worked Operation Lone Star past several years, and then when I got out, I was a counter-human trafficking guy on the border. Trump put a tourniquet, if you will, on the major bleed in the extremities as far as the numbers coming across. And that helped quite a bit. Our counter-human trafficking team helped kicked off by Tom Homan himself, trusted us and through a vetted resources on the border, got us in the forefront. But the repatriation project, it's going to take a while to really ramp up. But what it's done for us is instead of looking for a needle in a stack of needles, it's a little easier to find the bad guys coming across with kids, fentanyl, money, going south, guns coming north. It's put a stop on that. And whatever the Department of State is doing, they're doing a good job because we're seeing what's going on the south side, and the federales, the Mexican government, is doing their job. Because they don't want tariffs, right? They don't want Green Berets and SEALs dropping in on the top of their cartels in the middle of their country, because that's really the way I see it. They don't want that. And so that's a good thing. For us in Texas, though, with regard to accountability and to bring in the right people, right? This is a time. People say to me, you're running for governor. Are you crazy? And I say, yeah, just crazy enough. But I know without a shadow of a doubt, that there's a new era coming in, which accountability will be part of it, but it's really just truth and transparency and action. This is the most common thing I hear with people in Texas. We want people of action. We don't want special sessions going on and on and on and nothing getting done. And legislators walking out, taking their ball and going home because they got redistricted. Look, stop the silly games. We got a national defense problem because although the tourniquet's been put on, that's a good thing. We still got a thousand tiny cuts, excuse me. And so we're working on that. And that's the road I'm on. We got 190 days to victory.
I'm glad you brought up the cartels and the tourniquet. Not only is Trump closing off that southern border, something we've talked about on this show a lot, that is just now making it into the mainstream conversation, is the Venezuela threat. the threat of Cartel del Sol and how they related to Tren de Aragua and the kind of coordinated invasion that Venezuela organized. Some could even say at the behest of the Biden regime, but definitely with the Biden regime turning a blind eye, at the very least, right, into our country. Trump has taken this threat very seriously. I know that Tulsi Gabbard, I shared on my Substack the briefing she received and then was passed on to President Trump that led to some of the executive orders related to Tren de Aragua and designating the cartels and the FBI's investigation into Cartel del Sol. Now Trump is taking that a step further. He's putting military resources, U.S. military resources on Venezuela's border. We've now learned in the last 24 hours, Maduro has moved troops to the border. I think a lot of people are concerned about this, saying they don't want to see us engaged in another conflict, that maybe we're overextended. But you in Texas, you very strongly understand the threat that was posed by Venezuela and Tren de Aragua and the kind of organization they really are. It's not just a gang. It's a transnational organization. It's a paramilitary arm of a transnational crime organization. So what do you think of President Trump's moves related to Venezuela?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a projection of force, and this is one of those things where you park a carrier off a coast, and typically people back down. You've got to show that you're strong enough. I'm a laissez-faire, hands-off, the world as far as policemen in the world. But when it comes to something that's a direct threat upon our border, and I'll tell you right now, 2 years ago, our team presented some information that actually was part of that big tranche of information on specifics of biometrics of TDA, Tren de Aragua, folks in the state of Texas. And so we are working heavily on that because the Cartel de Solos, the sun, that means that the rank as the sun is the generals. That's a national organization that's actually tied directly to a foreign terrorist organization. As such, we don't take that threat lightly. Now, part of my job as a Green Beret on the Texas border was to advise directly to the governor's staff. We advised it numerous times. I'm not going to sling mud. It's not the place right now. But what I am going to say is that we could have been far forward in the foxhole right now had we have done what we had advised post-threat vulnerability assessments on the Texas border. Trump has come back in now and done that, and that's helped us out tremendously.
He has, and he's kind of taken that same approach and doing it in crime-ridden cities, starting with Washington, D.C., deploying the National Guard. I suspect you support that move, Doc.
Yes, I do. Yes, once again, projection of force. You just have to see it one time. When you look at what's come into the nation over the last several years under the Biden administration, what's snuck in, right? Well, I'll give you this. Here's a statistic I personally saw firsthand. 12,500 Venezuelans came across at Piedras Negras, which comes into Eagle Pass, on the 18th of December 2 years ago. I was there. I followed them then to the convention center as they put them on buses to the convention center in San Antonio and then thrown into the interior, right? Some of those people had tattoos on their faces that are atypical or typical for TDA, Tren de Aragua. It's typically like an AK-47 right here. Probably not a good person, right? So we didn't vet those people. We didn't actually pull them in and do a secondary, which is what I would do on that particular situation. So that's really what thrust me into, is anybody doing anything about this? And, at that point, I was out of the military. I was just reporting from the border and paying attention to what was going on, looking for children they're being absconded with. But now I have to take it up to the strategic level, geopolitical level at this point in the state of Texas, to be the commander-in-chief over the Texas Military Department and the Department of Public Safety. It's a natural progression of a godly man or a man of honor or anyone, a woman of honor, to see something that is a travesty, to see tyranny, to see oppression, and to take a stand. It's a natural progression. I cannot not do this.
So many people in elected positions, though, Doc Chambers, can just turn a blind eye and not do that. And I mean, we're in a real crisis of courage, not just in Washington, D.C., but across the land, right? So we do need to get strong people with with strong integrity into local positions, because we learned, especially through COVID, right? We learned how important particularly our local officials are, where a lot of people don't pay attention. They're just like, oh, it's okay, you know. But we've learned how important state and local are. But what I've also found is we've highlighted election fraud on the national level, and we've elevated that conversation, but I don't think there's a lot of attention at the local level. I've talked to a lot of people in Texas, particularly in certain areas like Dallas County, and particular little hot spots of election fraud. Now, President Trump is talking about banning mail-in ballots of election fraud. Banning the clock is now after Labor Day on Monday, all eyes will be on the midterms, right? So the clock is ticking on this. You have a vested interest in any kind of election reforms.
I do. Yes, I do.
Will Trump really do this? And what kind of effect will it have on Texas? Because people think, oh, Texas is red, but Texas is one of the states that Democrats have their eyes on.
They have their eyes on it. Most of our municipalities, sans Fort Worth. Fort Worth is completely red, but everything else is subject to exactly that. And we know that trickled down. The Dominion machines, the Smartmatics, all those things were affected elections in Texas as well. So what I did was last year I went to the Sheriff's Association meeting in Fort Worth and met with 254 sheriffs. Now I didn't meet every one of them, but they were all in the room. And then we took the ones that wanted to be constitutional, so to speak, and we went through hand count ballot training. I went through it myself, and then I was teaching sheriffs. And now we've got one of the counties up there in Dallas-Fort Worth that are doing it. But that's not the only answer, because the other thing is when that information then gets hand counted, it gets put into a machine. So we've got to make sure that there's no nefarious actor in the man in the middle, if you will, that's turning the knob either way to decrease the amount of votes that or increase on the other side. So this to me is good news. That's I'm March the 3rd, day after Texas Independence Day, March the 2nd. We're going to call it Texas Liberation Day when we win that thing.
Well, we'll definitely be watching. Doc Peters, Doc Chambers, I'll leave you with the final word. There's a lot of good that happens in Texas, but like every state, you hear the gripes from the constituents that there needs to be change in this area or that area. If elected, what is your major focus for the people of Texas? Right.
The major focus for me right now, because of the time that we're in, is I've got to have the baseline of just state security. To understand that I'm a man of action, that I will provide you security. I had a group of ladies in a meeting in Highland Park, Dallas, and they said, well, we are concerned about security. And I said, ma'am, it's my job to stay up at night as your commander-in-chief so that you and your family can sleep peacefully in your beds and not worry about this. But understand that this is going to be an all hands on deck. This is not just a Texas election. This is a nationwide election. We are a domino of the flyover states. If Texas were to fall politically, that sets the course for second and third order effects nationally that could be devastating. So that's one. Now, election integrity, 100%. There's a lot of executive orders that are building up, ready to go day one. I know people aren't going to like that. I'm not an overreach guy when it comes to government, but I've got to turn some things around regarding prior policies that don't make a lick of sense, right? I mean, common sense is what we're going for, and that's what I believe we're going to achieve.
Common sense is a short commodity in government at large. It doesn't matter if it's state, local or national. And I'm in one of those blue areas, so I can definitely say that. That I hope we can eventually turn around. Doc Chambers, I have never had so many people call me and reach out to me and say, "This person's running. You must have him on your show." This kind of support you have is overwhelming. I can't even tell you it's been dozens of people. So I'm very pleased to talk with you. I do know that you have the background that is relevant to the issues that Texans face. And based on the gripes that I've heard in the past, especially related to the border and maybe some of the action that wasn't taken in your experience and what you have worked in, you do understand it. and you know how
Yeah.
what's feasible, what should be done. So I think that would be great for Texas. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for jumping. And I love your background.
This is my operations trailer. We're actually on a
I can tell.
mission. Yeah,
Where are you headed?
we're down between Carrizo Springs is where we'll be, but all the way over to Eagle Pass and Del Rio.
Wow. Well, travel safely, Doc. It's good to see you, and we'll keep up with your campaign.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We're still awaiting President Trump in his cabinet meeting with his cabinet. In the meantime, we'll take a commercial break and we'll be right back.
Welcome to Vocal, the free speech social app that gives you a platform to amplify your voice. Speak freely, connect boldly, and be part of a growing movement for truth, faith, and freedom. Want to know what's happening right now? The Now Playing feature shows you exactly who's live and what's streaming in real time. Check out the show's feed, a non-stop lineup including Lindell TV News 24/7, shows and on-demand programming all in one place. Connect with your favorite host and never miss a show. Explore the featured page for quick access to Lindell TV's top shows. Follow your favorites and watch their newest content flow right into your feed. And when they go live on Vocal, you can join the live chat and be part of the action. Ask questions, share your thoughts, even help shape future shows. Stay informed on issues around securing our elections by following your state's Cause of America account. Join a group and connect on a deeper level, from faith and freedom to the future of our nation. Go to vocal.com or download the app today and be a part of the mission to save our country.
Let's face it, you can't trust Big Pharma. They've already tried to block ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and raise prices on everything from antibiotics to your daily meds. Well, there's good news. All Family Pharmacy is standing up for medical freedom and helping people get the treatments they actually want. My family and I use them all the time. They made it easy and affordable without the runaround. While other pharmacies are jacking up prices, they've actually dropped theirs. Ivermectin now starts at just $2 a capsule. Use my promo code Lindell10, you get an extra 10% off of that. You need ivermectin, antibiotics, or methylene blue, you name it, they've got it. They make it simple. You fill out a short online form, a licensed doctor reviews it, and your meds ship fast right to your front door. If you want to be prepared and have your medications on hand, this is your new pharmacy. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10 saves you even more. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10.
President Trump is now speaking live from the White House in his cabinet meeting. Let's listen in.
A lot of hotels and things, and I'd go to North Carolina. I'd buy the greatest. They were the greatest, most talented people. And then China came along and took all of those jobs away. If they would have tariffed them, China wouldn't have taken any of the jobs. But we had presidents that, honestly, and I like some of them, but they didn't know what the hell they were doing from a business standpoint, from running the country. And North Carolina, the most talented woodworkers that you've ever seen. I'd be there and I'd watch them. I'd say, I'd like to have a rail in that chair. Maybe can you fancy it up a little bit? How about this, sir? And they'd hand me a thing. It was like they were artists. They were unbelievable. And that business was stolen from us by others, not only China, but by others. All of a sudden, you're ordering your furniture from China. It was not even close to being as good, but they couldn't compete with it. If we would have said it costs 100% or 200% tariff, you wouldn't have lost one job. It's so sad. But we're going to rebuild North Carolina furniture and other places, South Carolina too, to a lesser extent. They make furniture. But furniture, we're going to put a very substantial tariff on. We've already announced it. It'll be done pretty quickly. And when that happens, everyone's going to start. I just tell you, North Carolina, go out and start getting the grandchildren and the children, start teaching them, because some of those incredible artists that I knew as young people, they're older people now, but they still have the talent and they have time left. But they're going to be teaching their sons and their daughters and their grandchildren, and it's going to be a beautiful thing to see. It's going to happen like magic. It's going to happen without question. It's not like, gee, I hope it happens. It's going to happen. the results of Ford that just announced it's going to create 4,000 new jobs, American jobs. Hyundai, 14,000 jobs. General Motors is moving production of the Chevy Blazer and Equinox from Mexico back to the United States where it belongs. Don't forget, we lost 55% of our auto production over the last 35 years. 55%. We were the auto capital of the world. Like there was nobody even think about challenging us. We lost 55% of it to Mexico, Canada, China, a lot to China, and other countries. And it's all coming back. We will be bigger. A couple of years, we'll be bigger than we ever were. We'll be more dominant. We'll be bigger. We make great product, too. We're starting to make really great product. We're going to be bigger than we ever were. We're going to be at the level that it was when we were the only one that really, we sold to the world. And we're going to be back selling to ourselves and other parts of the world. It's not going to be the same, but it's going to be equally as important as it was in the heyday 30 years ago. But we lost more than 50% of the automaking capacity. In fact, the unions, the auto unions, as you know, the top guy didn't know me, didn't like me, and now he likes me. He says, man, I can't believe what Trump has done. But the auto workers voted for me. They understood better than anybody else. The auto workers, the Teamsters voted for me. Teamsters are great. They all voted for me. No Republican has ever gotten the support of the Teamsters and the auto workers. And now the head of the auto workers, I mean, it's so amazing. I watch them on television there. They can't even believe what happened. And I told them all what was going to happen. We secured new market access for American agricultural exports all over the world. Our secretary is doing a great job. Thank you, Brooke. And we have negotiated historic trade deals with the United Kingdom, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, who was here yesterday, and the European Union. Foreign nations are now paying hundreds of billions of dollars straight into our treasury, and numbers that nobody's ever seen before. As you know, we made trade deals with a lot of countries, and many of those countries, just to be able to sit at the table, are paying us hundreds of billions of dollars. We made a trade deal with the European Union. They were rough on us for a long time, and now we have a very good deal. We made that with them. Trillions of dollars is coming into our country. Trillions. Far beyond billions, trillions of dollars. Wouldn't you say, Scott?
Yes, sir.
And in a short period of time. They have to buy $750 billion worth of our energy product. Energy is great. We have more than anybody else, so we're using it. But the European Union is a done deal, and Japan is done. And, I heard there was a problem with South Korea, but we met yesterday, and they're done. We didn't do anything. We just kept the same deal. He honored the deal. They wanted to see if I don't even want to say it, but they wanted to see if they could do something. But they honored the deal, which is nice. And we cut the previous record-setting trade deficit, I hear just came out. We cut it in half already. We haven't even said, we've only been here really for a few months because, you know, it takes you a little while to fix up the Oval Office and do those things, prepare for the battle, right? So we really only been here for a very short period of time, and we cut the trade deficit in half. Is that right? That's a fantastic. I didn't even think we were going to do that. And remember, these are things that are being built. These things are, you know, all these numbers I'm getting, they're not open yet. When they open, you're going to see things happen in the United States that nobody's ever seen before, including our country in its heyday. And I had the greatest economy in the history of our country my first 4 years, despite COVID, which was a very unfortunate situation for the whole world. We did a great job with it, never got the credit for the job we did. Operation Warp Speed, people say, is one of the greatest achievements ever in politics or in the military, because it was almost a military procedure. But everybody, including Putin, said that Operation Warp Speed, what you did with that, nobody can believe it. And we did a great job. But it was a horrible pall over our country. We had a very dark cloud over the world. That was a very, very bad thing that came out of Wuhan, which I said it came out of Wuhan. That's where it came from. And China suffered greatly, but everybody did. But we we did a good job with that, as good as you can possibly do, and we came back, and now we're stronger than ever before. If I didn't win this election, this country was gone. I'm telling you, economically it was gone. None of the things that we're talking about would have happened. The whole world was robbing us blind, friend and foe. They were stealing our jobs, our money, our factories. They were stealing everything. We would have been a shell. We would have been a bankrupt, broken shell. And that's the way it is, but we're doing just the opposite. Stronger than we've ever been. Last month, in a landmark achievement, I also proudly signed the largest working class tax cuts in American history. So the bill that, I'm not going to use the term great, big, beautiful, that was good for getting it approved, but it's not good for explaining to people what it's all about. It's a massive tax cut for the middle class. It's a massive tax cut for jobs. And it's, I mean, think of it, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. So seniors, I don't know how you can vote for anybody else. And, just think of that, and no tax on overtime. So you work overtime, you don't have to pay tax on overtime. That's good. The Democrats don't know what they're gonna do. So they have, like, this soundbite. They have all these sound bites. They send it out. I don't know. Some guy sends out a word, and everybody uses it, including the fake news. Some of you are here right now. I'm looking at you. And it's death. They use the word death. No, it's actually life. It's almost like a newborn life. It's not death. That's their soundbite. The bill is death. It's not. We strengthen Social Security. We strengthen Medicare, Medicaid. The job we've done on Social Security is, if the Democrats got in, Social Security is over because the country's going to fail. There won't be any Social Security. And I made that pledge to you. We're going to take care of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and we're doing that in spades because the country is becoming so successful again. And it hasn't been this successful. I think in the end, it will never have been this successful. I don't think it'll even be close with what's happening.
All right. You heard President Trump right there. It sounds like he's already making his pitch for the midterms to try to bolster more support in his Republican trifecta in the House. Of course, historically, midterms aren't great for presidents, but he noted all of his successes and some that we could, debate whether it was successes, Operation Warp Speed. But the president already sounding like he's turning his focus somewhat to the midterms. Now, we may check back in the cabinet meeting later. We expect that to go on for a long time. Speaking of the midterms, ultra left-wing New York Times has a stunning new poll out that shows Democrats are panicking, and rightly so, over their electoral prospects following 2024. According to this poll, many of the tight races, the Dems barely panicking, and right following 2024 races 2024 will not be breaking in their favor after 2028. Of course, none of this will really matter if, we don't actually do anything about the voting machines. Trump's brought it up. We hear there's lots of movement behind the scenes. I've been trying to keep you abreast of what I know that I can actually share, but we're still waiting on decisive executive action. According to Rasmussen reports, 53% of all Americans polled support in-person voting. Like I said, it's not officially been done yet. Accountability is required in all things. And that's why it's so tragic that despite the great polling about the Democrats' implosion, there's still no accountability about COVID. In fact, you just heard President Trump touting Operation Warp Speed once again. The greatest violation of our collective rights in decades occurred during the COVID era. And here's Jimmy Dore talking about just that.
Is people's willingness to memory hole COVID. And nobody's, Trump came in, Fauci got pardoned here in the United States, and nobody has to pay a price for any of the lies they told. There's no hearings. There's no anything. There's not even a congressional hearing. There's nothing to find out how this happened, how we did all this anti-science stuff, from calling people racist who theorized where the virus originated correctly, to the anti-science about masks and lockdowns and herd immunity and natural immunity, and the vaccine itself it doesn't stop transmission and contraction, which is the basis for mandates. It was nothing but lies.
And what about accountability? Rasmussen has numbers on that too. Fortunately, they asked the question, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Quote, it's time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. 46% of people strongly agree. It's a pretty strong number. 16% somewhat agree, making a solid majority there. Only 11% somewhat disagree, and only 16% strongly disagree. Of course, there's always that ambiguous around 10%, 11% in this case. They're just not sure. We're now joined by Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen to go over what all this data means, how it's going to impact the midterms, and if President Trump is doing enough to drain the swamp. Mark, it's good to see you. You heard President Trump hit a lot of the things that you're polling about right there in just that 5 minutes that we played. Let's talk about the Democrats, because he's already making his pitch for the midterms. What are you seeing on the Democrat ticket? Looks like we're having a bit of an issue with your sound, Mark. I'll give it a minute, and let's sit back. Let's see if we can get that situated. If not, we'll take it to a quick commercial break. We'll see if we can fix this technical issue, and we'll be right back.
The last time President Trump was in office, gold soared 50% and silver went up a huge 53%. Americans who invested in silver and gold during Donald Trump's first presidency are very happy that they did it. And right now, gold continues to soar to the highest numbers in history. These gains are just an appetizer for what's to come. Some market analysts are saying that gold is predicted to rise another 30% in the next year alone. So now's the time to invest in gold and silver, and that's why I partnered with Fisher Liberty Gold. Fisher Liberty Gold is a conservative-owned and operated precious metals investment company. They even helped my good friend President Trump get elected through their contributions to Turning Point USA and other conservative groups. I have dedicated my life to ensuring that people get the best sleep ever. And in addition to owning a MyPillow, I can now sleep well at night knowing that you can all protect your savings with precious metals with Fisher Liberty Gold. With Fisher Liberty Gold, you can sleep well knowing that your retirement is secure. And if you call now, you're going to receive your very own presidential gold guide and qualify for up to $20,000 in free silver. But wait, there's more. Call now or text metals to 26786 to receive your presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty. And for a limited time, I will send you a free MyPillow for qualified accounts. This presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty will tell you exactly why you need to own gold even while Donald Trump is president. And just by calling in, you get a free MyPillow for a limited time for qualified accounts and up to $20,000 in free silver. So don't wait. Call 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today. That's 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today to receive your free MyPillow and up to $20,000 in free silver.
And we're back with the great Mark Mitchell, who we can hear now to talk about all the polling they have. We know how it goes. That's what happens in live TV. So President Trump is essentially saying that the Democrats are panicking. What say you based on what you're seeing in your trends?
Well, here's the thing. Donald Trump could have a lot of successes, and I really do think he is. But at the end of the day, it comes down to political realities and what are people going to give him credit for. And so he's had a lot of economic progress. It looks like there's going to be a really bright future for America, manufacturing and all this. But as of recently, as of last month, when we asked about his situation on the economy, he gets less than 20% rated excellent, and he's less than 40% excellent or good. So those numbers aren't that great. And his approval rating right now, he's at 50%. disapproves 49%, net +1. This is the first time it's been positive since July 23rd because the Epstein thing really hurt him. And so he should continue to do what he's going to do. But there's a list of, I think, a lot of things that Americans want accountability on. And some of these, they're not really seeing them. A really prominent one is COVID. And let's not forget the fact that although there was outright election cheating in 2020, there was stuff going on with the mail-in ballots, there was stuff happening in the swing states. At the end of the day, in my opinion, the biggest part of the steal was the COVID-driven mass formation that drove people into the arms of the establishment. People wanted normalcy. And remember this Russian collusion hoax. And so every time we ask, Americans want to see accountability. We get a number of close to 60% of people that want to see people go to jail for the fact that our intelligence agencies undermine the Trump administration with the Russian collusion hoax. So there's all these things that people want accountability on, and I think that he needs to deliver. But when you talk about politics, we're in a really tricky situation. The Democrats are an absolute mess nationally. Their leaders are terrible. There's a vacuum. People like the skin changer, Gavin Newsom, are the ones who are leading the race for 2028 right now. And every time we've done a matchup with him against Trump versus other people, he underperforms. And he's losing the last time we tested him against J.D. Vance as well. And the only other person they have at this point who's even remotely competitive is Kamala Harris. She's still leading in the polls. So 2028 is going to be a massacre for them, I think, assuming that nothing major happens and Trump continues to be successful. And then that stuff you showed in the beginning is, as well, is very dangerous for the Democrats. So even before we start redistricting Republican states, even before we start talking about redoing the 2020 census, the 2030 census is going to be a bloodbath for Democrats. The thing you showed from the New York Times shows that they're going to be losing 5, 6, 7, 8 electoral votes, depending on the matchup compared to where they were doing in 2024. And that's all just due to Democrats fleeing blue states because of COVID lockdown measures. This stuff about California leading the U-Haul index nationally, like those things have a toll, and they're gonna add up in 2030, 2032. And so where we're looking at next is the midterms, 2026. And right now, there's not one single mainstream pollster that has Republicans winning in the generic ballot right now. And so Democrats are in a position, this is a really tricky position, where they're probably going to lose massively just because of all the demographic trends, just because of the way that Republican states are getting more powerful. And yet they have a chance to take over the House. It actually looks like they're going to in the fall of 2026. And so what do they do with that little bit of power? What do they do with the fact that they control all these very large and powerful blue states that are now resisting? They're trying to, you see the stuff going on between Texas and California. That's all going to play out. And Trump has got a lot of positive things left to do, like this stuff where he's calling in the National Guard to DC. Violent crime was a really big deal. People want violent crime fixed. Mm-hmm. This is popular. And so it's like we have a rock meeting a hard place. I'm not really sure what the Democrats are going to do, but they're going to have to accelerate, and they're probably going to get more dangerous.
Well, I agree with that. I think they're going to get more dangerous. I do think people really want accountability. In fact, your polling shows that, right? People want accountability, whether it's COVID, whether it's Russiagate, and some of the other issues that have plagued us from the last few years. But I don't know. Let's say Trump does. Actually, we're hearing the next few weeks are going to be pivotal, right? This is right in time for the midterm election, but that's Donald Trump, right? If he does his part on draining the swamp, which your polling shows that Americans are not sure, they don't think he's been successful yet. But like I said, the next few weeks could be pivotal. We're hearing lots of mumblings. I know you are too, from DC. If he does that, that's Trump. That doesn't necessarily translate to Congress, right? Because your polling shows that though he's promised to drain the swamp, most people do not believe that Congress has any motivation or any desire to help Donald Trump drain the swamp, right?
That's exactly right. Draining the swamp is a 60 to 70% position. 67% supported it last time we tested it. We just tested it again, and it was 62%. But the marks aren't that good. 13% say Trump's been very successful. Another 32% say somewhat, but that's still 45%. Only 24% of Republicans think that Donald Trump has been very successful. So he can have wins, but ultimately this election was about a referendum on the overreach of the oppressive uniparty cabal. And so it's not going to get fixed unless Trump goes after these really big, hairy, audacious things like COVID accountability. Because remember, 70% of people thought that COVID came from a Wuhan laboratory. 50% of people thought that it was at least somewhat likely the vaccines were killing a significant amount of Americans. And Trump's out there still touting Operation Warp Speed. So now, whether Trump's successful or not, the question becomes, well, he built a big coalition of crossover Democrats and independents that were sick of the Republican Party. That's how he turned out as many people as the Democrats did in 2020 with all that massive mail-in fraud. And I don't think that that's going to convert necessarily to Republican votes when he is not on the ballot. And so we've tested this a bunch of different ways, but the one that comes to mind just recently is that we asked if you approve or disapprove of Congress, and only 38% of Trump 2024 voters have a very favorable impression of the Republican Party. Republicans, only 20% have rate Congress excellent. These are very horrifying marks. And back in May, I think we asked, agree or disagree, Republicans in Congress have not delivered on Trump's mandate. 60% agreed with that statement. And so we know that this is like the least effective Congress we've seen in probably modern political history. Even though Trump was delivered the entire government, they've passed essentially nothing except the one big beautiful bill. And one big beautiful bill was a confused mess. Like, Donald Trump can come out there and say, oh, well, it's got the biggest tax cuts in the history. People aren't necessarily going to feel that because those tax cuts are basically avoided tax increases. And so at the end of the day, the one big beautiful bill just disappeared into the July 4th weekend. He didn't get a bounce out of it. It got very little of his stuff done. And it was, as you know, a Washington, D.C. abomination. So when are the Republicans going to give voters a reason to vote for them? And in my opinion, that reason isn't Texas redrawing their map, because people don't like gerrymandering. They think that it undermines a democracy. So my recipe for success for the Republican Party is govern well. Like, imagine that. Crazy idea.
Imagine that. So what we talked about with Doc Chambers, just a little bit of common sense. Real quick, we got 30 seconds. Trump also, he touted Operation Warp Speed again today. He hit China on, the origins of COVID, but he has had some controversial statements about China and allowing Chinese student visas up to the tune of 600,000 in the last 24 hours. I think he was trying to walk that back just a little bit in that cabinet meeting today. Are you going to do polling on that? 30 seconds.
Yeah, 100%. But Americans think that China's an enemy. And that's all due to Trump. Like, he came out there, and because of his positioning on China, now half of America thinks China's an enemy. And now we're going to let all the students in out of his own mouth. Same thing as Epstein. He's got to know his base.
He's got to know his base. I think he heard a little bit about it over the last 24 hours. We'll see. And then, of course, you'll have your polling hopefully by next week on this very topic. We'll have you back. We'll talk to our viewers about that. And I know the White House will see it, so we'll see how they adjust. Thank you so much, Mark Mitchell, for doing the tour with us.
Great to be here. Thanks.
And speaking of China, here is what President Trump's Commerce Secretary had to say about China and their CCP visas just yesterday. Take a listen.
How is allowing 600,000 students from the communist country of China putting America first?
Well, the president's point of view is that what would happen...
1,000 students from the America first.
What 600,000 students is that you'd empty them from the top, all the students would go up to better schools, and the bottom 15% of universities and colleges would go out of business in America. So his view is he's taking a rational economic view, which is classic Donald Trump, looking at higher education and saying,
but why are you
until
helping
we
Harvard?
modify that.
Join us now is a member of the New College Board of Florida, Mark Bauerlein, to talk more on this. Mark, it's good to see you. This is such a change from the first term when Trump was highlighting how students infiltrated, academia and how often they're spies. We heard Pompeo talk about that a lot in the first term. What is going on here? And should Trump or should he not allow these visas? You've worked in many universities. You're a professor emeritus at Emory. You're now advising New College. You were going to advise the Trump administration the first time around. And it sounds like he's trying to prop up the Ivy Leagues, of which he and his base have previously been so critical. What is this?
Well, not only the last term, but just a couple of months ago as well, Emerald, a different tune on the Chinese students. But as you know, Emerald, and your team know better than anyone, everything that happens in D.C. is inside baseball. There's more going on here. One wonders if this has to do with negotiations that the Trump administration has been having with the Ivies as part of the settlement of things. One wonders if it's something having to do with negotiations with China on trade. We don't really know. In a way, it comes down to, do you trust President Trump to be doing the right thing for the American people? And we would want to wait and see on this one. But the question to ask here is, who benefits, right? Who makes something out of this situation? And it is what I just mentioned. The schools love foreign students, the wealthy, schools that are charging $75,000 a year, because foreign students don't deal with financial aid issues, federal loan programs. They write a check, and for the full amount. And it's a great thing for schools, many of whom are operating pretty close to the edge financially. So, it was about 25 years ago that we saw this big influx of foreign students at the undergraduate level. Graduate level had been happening for many years before that, especially in the hard sciences and engineering. But at the undergraduate level, and there you actually had a different profile of the immigrant kid or the foreign kid. These kids that I saw, they weren't going to school first generation, and their parents were working in a tiny shop or in a laundry or something. These actually were wealthy kids driving Maseratis around the campus. And I think it was a lot of the Chinese money. They didn't have the institutions that would handle things, and these actually weren't the greatest students either. But again, they paid full benefits. And we'll see. This can't be something in isolation, this decision. It's got to be related to something else. And I'm hoping that, in the next week or two, we get a little clarification on these things. I mean, if you want $400 million out of Harvard as a penalty for what Harvard has been doing, well, maybe it's worthwhile to give them a little bit of a leg up on keeping all those foreign students that Harvard has.
I absolutely agree with you. I think, I think Trump hinted to that. I think your instincts are right. I think we probably heard Trump hint at that in the cabinet meeting earlier today, when he was talking about China, the trade deficit, and how so many people, so many past governing people let them buy. And he's, shoring up this trade deal and disparity with China. So I think your instincts are probably right. Given that, let's say they secure a trade deal, we're good with trade. Can Trump renege on this visa issue, and should he?
Well, that's a tough call. That's for experts in negotiation and people who make political calculations. But here's the thing, Emerald. Who is harmed by this process? And the guest on Laura Ingram's show sort of hinted at the fact
the Commerce Secretary.
We've got a lot of American students coming out of high school who, frankly, aren't nearly as qualified, especially in those STEM fields, as a lot of the foreign students. What we really need to focus on is improving the high school level of education in science and math, so that we are producing those 18-year-olds who are just as strong as those Chinese and Indian students as well. That's, it'd be nice if a heck of a lot of that money that came in from the elites out of the fines did go to, improving discipline in schools, so that those kids who do want to work aren't brought down by those 2 or 3 troublemakers in class that they have such a hard time controlling. That we do have more programs to reach those top students. Think think about the No Child Left Behind. What was that focused on? The bottom half. Okay, because people sort of think, the better kids, they don't need that much help. No, they do. If we're going to compete with China, we've got to support the top students because they're not as good as their top students. We've got a lot of good kids in the top 10%, but boy, you get down to the 20, 30%, it's a steep fall. Those are the kids that we need to prepare so that they will go into college ready to hit the physics and chemistry and engineering.
Look, this is a multifaceted problem, right? Because yes, you can do that, but then you also have to get to the immigration reform, which Howard Lutnick did allude to in that interview with Laura Ingraham, though he didn't really expound on it, I would say, or clarify it in a way that would support his argument. But he was also on a shortened time. It looks like they had to end that segment because right now, let's say we focus on the STEM education. When they get out there and try to get a job, and they do go through college. What we found is that the tech companies are prioritizing cheap labor overseas and giving them the jobs instead of these American kids who might have done the right thing and went and got the education. So this is something that it's something that the Trump administration has to take a holistic approach to. Right? It's not just. I just hate the idea that, they say we're supporting or propping up these institutions that have been so anti-American. I think there needs to be some accountability there, and they don't need to be propped up. But this is a multifaceted problem. We're actually going to talk, hopefully, with some U.S. tech workers this week and really try to explain it at every angle. But I hear what you're saying, Mark. I do, and I absolutely agree.
I think, Emerald, it is really going to be key what happens with Harvard. A lot of the top universities, they're already playing ball with the Trump administration behind the scenes. They want to keep kind of a low profile because they know that their own constituencies on campus, the professors there will have a temper tantrum if they learn that. But if Harvard comes out with a big fine and large concessions and does things like what Columbia is having to do, and that is report all the racial demographics and other demographics on hiring and student admissions, that is going to be legally binding and will evoke lawsuits if they start playing further games with identity politics. I think that tells everyone. You go after the bully in a group. You go after the strongest guy in the crowd if you want to make a statement, and the rest will fall in line. So I think that what happens with Harvard is worth watching very closely.
And we will, Mark, and we will. Thank you so much. It's good to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
And that's the absolute truth. DC Live is next with more from that news-breaking cabinet meeting at the White House after this break.